All right. We are back for another live broadcast. And once again, this is the relationship series. We always talk about matters of the heart and mind. And I'm Gina Spatero, and this is my brother Sam Spatero. And I'm going to let him introduce this topic tonight and let him kick it off. So why don't you go do that, Sam?
All right. How are you all tonight? If you wouldn't mind hitting some comments here, let us know if you're here. And if there's anything you enjoy that we discuss tonight, please hit the like button. So tonight we're basically talking about the top 5 things of reasons why relationships end. And I mean, there's numerous factors, but some of the most common ones are money, work, sexual abuse, cheating, and mental abuse. And they all have different contributing factors. Number one, to the relationship and to the ending of the relationship in itself, and why people move on without truly maybe giving it everything that they have, or anything more than what they're using at the moment. So I think maybe what we could do first is we can discuss work. Um,
Okay.
Work can have a really huge positive impact on relationships. It can also have a negative aspect. Now, I'd like to use myself as a man, for example. When I first got involved with my wife, I worked all the time. I mean, I was in the construction business, and I can remember keeping the high beams on at night sometimes to finish jobs because, as a man, you want to be a provider. You want to be able to do so many different things for your wife, but it can also come with a lot of negative things. And what I mean by that is if you come home, after a hard day's work, and if you're doing this more frequently than less, and I think in most Western cultures today, this is probably the norm for most people, is you're kind of giving the leftovers. You're giving what you have left in your tank, and it might not be that good at all. And there's actually someone that I spoke with who's an older gentleman, and his wife actually left him, and he just couldn't understand why. He was working all the time. There was money coming in, and I think this is an answer maybe that, and I love what we're doing here. You know, there's such a disconnect between men and women today. And I really love how you and I came together and we thought, we need to do something that both people can watch, whether you're new in a relationship, you've been in a relationship for 40 years, and maybe you're just starting out. We want to share with you the tools. So number one, you become the best you. Attract the best possible person who's going to appreciate and respect you. And third, create a life with someone who you can grow, contribute to one another, experience the most loving connection, which we all deserve. So
Right.
I'm going to leave it with you. So you're a woman. You're
Mhm.
with a man who's working all the time,
Right.
and he thinks he's doing good by working all the time and providing with a lifestyle. But yet, what is counterintuitive about that maybe a woman doesn't necessarily have or is getting, and the reason why you would want to leave if that is the
Mhm.
case?
I think it's different. I think I know in anything, in any relationship, whether it be friends, whether it be intimate, there has to be a balance somewhere. And once the scale starts to tip a certain way, of course, there's going to be, feelings of insignificance, lack of, intimate connection, that kind of stuff. But here's the trick in it all. When you are invested in someone who is constantly on their purpose, constantly striving for growth to be better, you have two choices. One, you can either join them and figure out how you two can be on your purpose and change some things in your life to kind of excel and match and to kind of emulate some of those qualities. Or you can be the opposite in all of that, where you feel neglected because there really is only two choices. And I mean, for you, Sam, you really can't change an entrepreneurial brain. When someone's turned on their entrepreneurial brain, it just goes. Like there's never an ending goal. There's constant goals to be met and constant goals to be made. So I think that you have to be supportive in that end. But I also feel as though as a woman, of course, you're going to need that loving connection, that, time. For me, I'm not and it's all personality types too. There's some very needy people out there. I don't ever nag or, ask why he's working so much, because on my end of the spectrum, I get it, and my whole part of it is to support that journey for him without being what he doesn't need at that moment. But in doing so, your partner will understand how to meet your needs, because you are also giving off um, that notion of understanding what they need from you. So, I mean, would you really want to be with someone who nags you all the time about working so much? When you're on your purpose and your drive, or would you want someone to be a complementary piece to that part where it's like, and we just got to this point where he is growing so big that, sometimes the nights that we do have for ourselves, there is work involved now. And for me, I don't want to rearrange the times that are important for us, but I also need to allow for him to grow in those moments with his business and allowing for more time for that. Um, I really think it's personality types, to be quite honest with you, Sam. I'm not the type of person that constantly needs to be catered to. There's some people that are, right? So maybe that's a developmental piece in themselves, but there's so many ends of the spectrum. If it's a constant neglect of needs, then of course there's going to be issues. Everybody wants, what are the five love languages, right? Some people need that quality time more than others. And if it's being neglected, of course there's going to be issues. But I think someone who does have a relationship and is an entrepreneur, they have to understand how to balance that, because it can create a lot of dysfunction for sure.
Absolutely. So, a very good example of this, because I know we have some other topics, is Elon
Yeah.
Musk. Elon Musk
Yes.
is a serial entrepreneur. He's got three major companies: Tesla, SpaceX, and Solar City. Now, on the one side, he's amazing at business as an entrepreneur, but he sucks at relationships. He's in his third or fourth marriage
Yeah.
now, and he just hasn't figured out. So here's one thing I'm going to add for you men, and this is for the ladies, is one thing that I notice that I do with my relationship, because I love working. I'm
Hmm.
a it's innate in me to create and to always find a way to improve and do things. But what I try to do now is when I come home, I do like a priming session before I get out of my vehicle. It's funny, like people will see me uptown. I always got my headphones on. I'm prying myself to forget about work, to shut it off. And I try to put myself in a state of service. What does my wife need from me at this moment? What do my kids need? What do my family need? So I'm completely present and my mind's not on something, some problem, something that I'm trying to create that really is irrelevant to being present.
Hmm.
And a lot of the times, you men out there, if you only have 30 minutes or even an hour of time with your wife and I, if you are fully present and shut off your brain to everything else, she will
Yeah.
feel you fully, and that will be enough.
Hmm.
But just working, sending gifts, and not being fully engaged in her presence just isn't good enough. And your
No.
relationship will end. And I can't tell you how many countless relationships that I find end up happening this way. Now, let's go to the flip side.
Hmm.
You're involved with someone who's an entrepreneur, someone just loves to work a lot.
Hmm.
How do you support them on their mission as a man? A man loves to conquer, to achieve, and a lot of women now also like to do the same.
Right.
But if you're finding that, your man's constantly saying that you're nagging me, all I want to do is work, I'm trying to do things with family, you have to understand what is going on in a man's head. He's trying to do everything for you. He's trying to show you that he's the best mate, the best provider. He can do it all for you. So maybe you can switch your tune a little bit. Number one, trade your expectations for appreciation. This
Hmm.
is one of Tony Robbins' sayings. And what do I mean by that? When he comes home and he came home a little bit late, instead of nagging him and getting on his back about things, why don't you first try to ask him how was day one? How
Hmm.
did work go? What were his amazing achievements that he could talk to you about, so you could feel his day and his energy and what he wanted to do?
Yeah.
And then your needs can be met and say, hey, you know what? when we're done doing what we're doing, we put the kids down or we're showering, whatever, I would really just love 30 minutes one-on-one with you to be fully present.
Yeah.
And it's just like Gina touched on, you are going to get what you give.
Hmm.
And that's the way life works. Whatever you're giving out is the exact same thing you're going to give. And I can literally now, because I've been in a relationship for over 20 years with my wife, and I can almost catch myself now. Now I'm far from perfect. And I think any expert is far from perfect.
Right.
But what we have just learned to do is make it a little bit better.
Hmm.
So I think if you're struggling with this and you've been in a relationship, it doesn't take decades to change. It just takes a new mindset, a
I
new
agree.
thought process, a new belief,
Hmm.
for you to make a difference. So
I agree.
yeah, so I think we can finish with the work thing.
Hmm.
Why don't we now talk about one thing which I'm sure a lot of people probably have struggled with is cheating. So maybe there's someone who maybe isn't even married per se that's watching this, and you're with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and they cheated on you. Maybe you're in a relationship and that's happened.
Hmm.
So number one, maybe we get some parameters about why people cheat.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, from a female's perspective, when a man cheats, how does it make you feel as a woman?
Hmm. Um, this is a very hot topic for myself, only because I've been there. I know what it feels like to have been cheated on, and it doesn't feel good at all. And I think that what people need to understand is the amount of work that you put into recovering from an episode of infidelity. Um, it takes all of you. It really, really does. And the work that is continued after that is lifelong, to be quite honest. Because it changes the dynamic in the relationship. However, I do understand in certain moments why possibly it might happen. And not that I'm saying that by any means that I condone it, because it's one thing I don't condone. I think if you are investing in an exclusive relationship in the beginning, you have a duty to either withhold, or not withhold, but kind of follow through with that agreement, or you just go on your own journey and your own path without creating the suffering in someone else's life. Because in the end, like I told you before in another episode, everyone has this little switch in their brain, and it's called their moral compass. You can say the angel and the devil, the good and the bad. Um, and we all make choices in events like this. And there will always be what we call temptation, because that's just who we are. We're human beings, and we desire things differently. We're structured differently. The male and female brain works differently. We understand this. However, however, if you are contemplating, infidelity within your own relationship, you have to be okay with the loss. You have to be okay with the outcome of loss, because a lot of the times that's you are either losing the person that you once knew, because when they find out, they will never be the same. They might do the work to help get to that point, but it will never be the same. Or the loss of entirely having that person in your life. But I know that you have probably coached a bunch of people who have gone through infidelity in their relationships as well, Sam. And um, who do you think is most affected most by it?
I think both can be. And there's
Yeah,
so many different elements that I mean, is there kids involved?
right,
Who is the income provider? What were the dynamics of the two different families and how would that be impacted?
right.
Right. There's so many different elements to that. And I mean, first and foremost, I mean, why do people cheat? You
Hmm.
know, I mean, let's face it, at some point, Maslow's theory is we all have six human needs.
Of
At
course.
some point in a relationship, that needs not being met. There's a perfect example of this. I was recently just coaching somebody who has been with someone for 30 years. And, you know, and they just said, their wife cheated on them. And I'm like, okay, well, take me throughout the course of the relationship. What were you like? What was she like in the beginning? I would do anything, for her. I was adventurous. I was all these things. And I'm like, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much are you doing that right now?
Mm-hmm.
And it was less than a 5.
Mm-hmm.
People often wonder why they end up where they are. I did a video on, how to avoid your, I believe it was your relationship end up being like a used car.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, eventually used car, you get bored of it.
Of course.
Human beings are the exact same way. Without growth, you will die inside. And in a relationship, it's even worse because you've just literally committed your life to one person. And if your needs aren't being met in this dynamic that you both decided, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or maybe just recently together, you just think because some priest said some eulogy and gave you some words and that was going to be the quick fix to creating a
Right.
relationship and that should be the thing that fuels you. Well, no, that's not how it works. Here's what needs to happen. You needed to define what your needs are, what it is that matters to you that's going to light you up. Do you need your partner to support you on your mission? Do you need adventure in your life? Are you someone who likes to have fun and is outgoing? So many times, and even seen this with myself, you get in a relationship, you get so complacent, right? Because that chase is over.
Yeah.
Well, I know especially women, there's this new term flying around on the internet called hypergamy, where, women are always looking to marry up, looking for that better guy with the more money, with the fancier car or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. And actually, I just had a conversation with somebody who just recently split up. And he told me, I felt like I could just give her everything and was never good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And, when it came to a time where I said, we really need to be careful of money. He goes, and she said to him, if you don't keep it coming, I'm gone. Right. So there's
Yeah.
so many different dynamics, whether it's from a male to female. We all have different needs that need to be met, whether you're introverted or extroverted, you're an adventurous person, or you're someone that likes to stay home. These are things that you need to discover right from the beginning. And
Yeah.
you better find a way to keep those fueled
Mm-hmm.
throughout the relationship as things evolve and change, as you have children.
Mm-hmm.
How will you not,
Yeah.
get rid of these things that matter?
It's funny because I agree with you to some extent. I understand that people change within relationships. I understand that sometimes you lose yourself and you become, you know, you grow in a different direction or you default to a different behavior, that type of thing. But I don't believe that every person who feels stuck in a relationship or at a standstill would do that. Because I know for me, I mean, no relationship is perfect, and in the imperfect parts, I would never, step out of a relationship just because my needs weren't being met or I wasn't feeling satisfied. I think there's two types of people, and you and I have discussed this before. There's two types of people. There's people that will, and there's people that won't, no matter what.
No,
So,
absolutely. But
do
I
you know what I
mean,
mean?
yeah, exactly. But we're just talking about the people that will,
Right.
right? So,
Right.
so if you're with somebody, and here's another thing. If you're in a relationship and someone cheated and you
Yes.
decided to be with them,
Hmm.
don't beat them up like a horse.
No.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen this in a relationship, and whether it's a male or female, they just look so beaten up and tired, like they've given up because they keep throwing it in their
Mhm.
face.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
Whether it's mental abuse, cheating, crossing the right on a religious belief, whatever it might be. There's boundaries that need to be set in place. The
Mm-hmm.
person definitely needed to be accountable
Of course.
to
Always.
hurting you and acknowledging that and what they're willing to do to work on
Yeah.
so that that doesn't happen again. And them also telling you why they did it.
Hmm.
And you can figure out all those reasons and you come up
Yeah.
with a blueprint of changing that future. Right.
Right.
But, you know, if you're with somebody and you're beating them up like a dead horse, set them free.
Yeah.
It's not fair to you. It's not fair to them. And I know that's your best technique for saying that you still don't believe they're fully accountable for their actions and
Hmm.
that they might do it again. And this is your way of protecting yourself. But you know what? Life is too short to live that
Mhm.
way. So if you need some tools, I mean, you can always reach out to us or reach out to a family therapist or
Yeah.
some coach. I mean, there's so much content out there on YouTube that's for free, which we get a lot of our stuff, whether it's from books or something.
Mhm.
Just find a way, number one, to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
But in return, that value will come out into the other person, and they'll be able to find out what it is exactly
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
need. They need to provide you as well.
Yeah. Because I think honestly, before we move on to the next topic, this is a topic that a lot of people struggle with,
Hmm.
um, because it does happen so often and people don't know how to navigate through it, and Esther Perel is such a great, wonderful resource if people, Google her or watch her talks. She explains it so beautifully. And like you said, like there's needs. Sometimes it doesn't happen because people fall out of love, but it doesn't make it right. She also doesn't condone it
No,
by any means.
no,
So,
absolutely.
all right. So, which topic would you like to hit up next?
Let's do so. We've done cheating. We've done work. What
Work.
about money?
Sure, let's do money.
Let's do uh, let's do money. So why is money important? Well, for you men out there, uh, it's not important to most women, but let's just say money is as important as it is as air.
Hmm.
Why do most women like men that have their money right? They're responsible. They're achievers. They're accomplishers. They're problem solvers. They're people that are always striving to the best, to problem solve, to navigate themselves way through life, no matter what's happening cyclically in the economy or in the dynamic of the relationship,
Right.
right? So that's one aspect of it. But most women want you know the great things out of life.
Right.
And I think naturally you're just attracted to people with money. I mean, let's face it, you're not looking at some tabloid and looking at some poor guy down the street that's pushing a cart down the road. It's some guy with a fancy car with the nice chandeliers and the big mansion with stone on the front of the house. And the
Hmm.
question is, why are you attracted to that? Well, back in the day, we lived in caves. You're always looking for someone that's going to steer you clear of all the threats, all the danger, all the elements of the weather and the change and the saber two tigers. Well, today it's just evolved
Hmm.
towards who's the guy that's going to get me the big home? Who's
Yeah.
the guy that's going to navigate me through economic turmoil? Who's the guy that's going to make the quick, hard decisions, for the family and keep moving us forward in the right direction? What are your thoughts on that?
I think Well, I think no matter what, I think it's a good idea for both a man and a woman nowadays to have their money right, first and foremost. Um, but you're right. I mean, there's so much underlying cues for someone who is financially stable and independent. One, it shows confidence. It shows stability. It shows security. And you're right. Back in the day, we women especially looked for providers. And that is a sure way to tell that someone who can provide. But the flip side now is, most likely a man of that status will most likely attract someone who also has their stuff right as well. Um, and vice versa. Someone who doesn't as a man might attract someone who doesn't as a woman. But I think it is a cue as well. If you're on a path of greatness, most likely you'll attract greatness yourself, right? So it all depends on your mentality and what you want out of life.
And for any of you guys that are watching this, I want you to hit the like button if you agree. I can't tell you how many countless times when I was younger and I'd see the hot girl walking down the street with the not most attractive guy,
Hmm.
but yet he was pulling into the nice fancy car, right? Women love intelligence.
Hmm.
There's that saying that, women go out, they're going to want to bang the hot, sexy guy, but they want to marry the guy that is going to provide them with security,
Hmm.
who obviously they hope is hot as well, but they're willing to compensate on the external factors
Hmm.
so that the internal factors create that longevity for the internal needs that need to be especially dynamically for a woman, for
Yeah.
security, right, and all those sorts of things. So I mean, if you agree with this, let me know, because I know, especially when I was younger, and I know a lot of guys even say that now, like, how is it that these average looking guys or black get these beautiful women. Well, that's one of the things. Women love intelligence. They love men with humor and that are fun and adventurous and aren't afraid to take risks.
Yeah.
And usually the guys with the money are the ones that are willing to take the biggest risks because
Hmm.
they know they come with the greatest awards. And that means that women are coming along for a ride,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Okay, so we have
What's the next one, G?
sex and we have mental abuse.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit on the sex one.
Okay.
I can remember when I was younger and I used to just sit back and hear married men talk, whether it was people from a factory, people in the construction industry, and I'd just be like, I never want to get married. They talk about how little sex they'd have and they would complain all the time. And I'm just like, oh my God, is this what like being married is about? I mean, this is horrific. Like, why would people want to get married? And I was actually like thinking like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why would there be a trade-off? And before I get into the details of it, and I touched note on this for any of you who are in a relationship and you're using sex as a weapon or a trade-off, you're making a huge mistake.
Hmm.
It should never, ever, ever be used in that way. And I'll tell you why. Because you're never going to find someone that's going to serve you in a way where they're putting your heart first. They're always going to try to do things where they know they're going to try to get something back,
Hmm.
right? And you're basically setting trade wars. What you really want to do is set the intention is sex is something that fuels the desires in a relationship that brings us closer and more connected. We experience more love, joy, our most utmost crazy thoughts and desires. Sex is an instrument for creating the most useful, loving, engaging relationship. It's one of those things that is a mold for a healthy relationship.
Right.
But
Of
if you're
course.
using it in the wrong context, then it becomes a weapon.
Hmm.
Now,
And I
have you
think,
have you had any experiences with this with any of your
yeah.
coaching calls?
So, I mean, without pointing fingers or anything, there's definitely instances where women use it to their advantage, right? Like they are the gatekeepers of this whole area. So, I mean, when you get married, they transition from sex as being desirable to an exchange for, it's almost like an exchange for work, honestly. You've heard those honey-do lists, and men feel nowadays that they have so many check lists or check boxes to tick off before they're even, thinking about possibly having an intimate connection with their partner. And there's no desire left, right? There's actually lack of respect. So a lot of those qualities are lost. But the whole key is it's understanding it, why it's happening, and what you need to do as a man or a woman to change it. Because if you're a man and you are begging for an intimate connection with your woman, then she's not in her feminine. She is actually delivering herself as the masculine role, and she doesn't like it. She probably doesn't even feel comfortable in this position, but you have given her that, and vice versa. So it's understanding how to be that person that you need to be for your partner, entering that feminine and that masculine role because it matters.
Of course, and I think
Yeah.
really if that is the case, the whole question is why.
Why?
And one of the reasons why most women become masculine is because when they were children, they didn't get that feminine attention that they needed.
Hmm.
And so when a girl doesn't get the feminine attention that needed, which is your undivided presence, no judgment, no opinions, you're just gazing into their eyes, fueling with I literally did that with my daughter tonight. I sat down on the bed and I was just, my male brain was going off on all these things I needed to do afterwards for work. And I just literally said, I'm just going to be present right now and shut it
Hmm.
off. And I do it a lot of the times with my wife. And you will, she will feel that.
Hmm.
They will get that sense of, your presence, and it really will alter how they feel around you. Your energy will
Yeah.
change, their energy will change. You'll feel an instant connection. And I do have kind of a rule of thumb. If you're just starting out a relationship and you have no children, when it comes to intimacy, I mean, it should be at the minimum 2 times a week, 2 to 3 times for sure. And if you have children, it should be the same.
Yeah.
The hours in the change and the hours in the day never change, but how you spend them will. And one thing that I found after, really being conscious of my time, especially, having two businesses now, I've got three kids, my wife is a career woman, is the time that I have when I'm home.
Yeah.
I really break it down in increments so that there's time for my kids, there's time for my business, but that I can be fully present with my wife, whether we're watching a show or having conversation or whether it's intimacy.
Hmm.
It's just, what are we in the mood for tonight?
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
new? What's exciting? That kind of thing. So
That's
yeah,
amazing. Honestly, that's
yeah,
and it's true. Like there's one thing as a woman that is so important. It's knowing when to shut off all of the other stuff and just be present, just the two of you, you know? Women long for that intimate connection, especially if their man is presented as, does carry that masculine role. It's important to continue to have that connection with your woman and vice versa with your man. Sometimes the man needs the space, which is, appreciated from their woman to get their work done. But the woman also needs that connection, which truly, truly is invaluable to a lot of women. So, should we go to the last one?
yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So, mental abuse. How would you define that for a lot of people that question what it might look like or sound like?
Well, I mean, mental abuse can come in so many different shapes and forms. Is it putting the person down,
Hmm.
right? Is it, whether that means physically, their intelligence,
Hmm.
you know, it could be the way they are in the bedroom, so many different things, and what happens over time, mental abuse could be shaming the person. Are you in a relationship with a narcissist where they're always manipulative, right? And they're never wrong. So there's so many different facets in that. And, this is a big contributor to why, number one, a lot of relationships end in divorce. But if they are still together, they still end because that person is gone. They're
Yeah,
gone emotionally, they're gone spiritually, they're broken, they're wounded, and they'll likely never come back.
right.
So, if you are in a relationship and you're experiencing mental abuse when it comes to, you know, any of the things that I just talked about, there's a saying in life: what you tolerate in your life is what you will continue to receive.
Hmm.
And the only time it changes is when you change the beliefs about what you deserve in your life.
Hmm.
There's nothing in your life that you aren't receiving that you don't think that you deserve.
Right.
Right. So, one rule of thumb of this is, if you are in this relationship and maybe you're with someone where it's really not that bad,
Hmm.
and you're just someone who doesn't really have a high self-esteem,
Hmm.
maybe you really need to say to yourself is, if I put a stop to this, what is it that I need to do?
Hmm.
And by doing those things, how will it change the way I feel about myself? And
Correct.
then naturally that person should automatically gain respect for you
Hmm.
because you've gained it for yourself. So
Right.
that's rule number one, to number one, stopping it. And then you're really just setting a boundary with that person. And at that point, if you've built up enough self-esteem to say, hey, you know what, here's what I need, universe, this person, whatever it might be, here's what I need to feel alive, for you to make me grow and become what I know I can be in my life. Right. But you need to set that boundary. You also have to establish, number one, where in your life have you seen this or someone treated you in a way where now you're accepting this person that you're with, whether you're male or female, that's treating you that exact
Yeah.
same context. It's a
Yeah.
belief that is allowing you to do this.
Yeah.
And it's something that you need to take the time to really discover and change.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, there's that famous saying where it's like you teach people how to treat you. Right. So,
100%.
and you do, and I've been guilty of it too, where I've let things completely slide where you think about it again in your head and it's like, okay, next time I'm going to be better in this area because I know what it does to me when people talk to me or do something in a certain way. And it's just retraining that part of you that demonstrates your worth for yourself. And it's you don't even have to demonstrate it for anybody else but yourself. what you are going to tolerate for you, what is negotiable and non-negotiable anymore.
Absolutely. I think, if some of you are in a relationship, I like to use examples because it makes it real.
Hmm.
For me, back in the early stages of my life when I just had one child, I'm someone who's always had anxiety.
Hmm.
And I would always see things on the worst case scenario all the time. And I was very rigid when it
Hmm.
came to, my children getting sick or, just things that would go wrong. I'd always see the worst in it all, where my wife was the complete opposite and would drive me nuts. And there would be times where I wouldn't talk to her. I would get angry and just
Hmm.
didn't know how to channel all that energy because I just couldn't understand why she couldn't, see my point and the value of why I was, you know, you know, focusing on wanting to make the decisions that I did and wasn't very supportive of, but she was supportive, but she decided that she had her own process. And that just even drove me more crazy. you
Hmm.
know, Being rigid is a form of mental abuse because you're not open minded to perceiving the other person's point of view.
Right.
If you're with someone that's very rigid and like one way, I mean, if it's in a positive way, that's fantastic.
Hmm.
But if it's in a way where there's no communication, there's no acceptance of your opinions, then yeah, that is a problem, a
Hmm.
major problem. That will wreak havoc in your mind because you'll start to put roadblocks on opening up.
Hmm.
You'll start to attach fears to communicating.
Yeah.
And number one, the abuse starts within, and then it just naturally just keeps emulating from there, right? So if you are that type of person, you're a very rigid person, I could say that is a form of some sort of mental abuse because the negative impacts you're having on that person's energy and the relationship is really something that's not valid.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think people need to understand too is if they've ever played a part in the same type of abuse in the relationship, because sometimes people are very quick to say so and so has done A, B, and C, but sometimes they have lit the fire themselves, and it's really taking a step back and be like, okay, what are the contributing factors that this is happening? Have I played a role in any way, shape, or form? And understanding that a lot of people like to play the victim mentality. And if you have played a role in it, it's understanding how both of you need to improve on that end of the spectrum, because a lot of the times in mental abuse situations as well, none of it's all right. None of it is okay by any means. But there is a lot of victim mentality in situations where people will never look at themselves and they will always gaslight and portray the negatives on their partner.
Absolutely. And I think I want to be very clear. If you are watching this and
Hmm.
you are in a relationship where you are being mentally abused, you're welcome to reach out to us and we can give you a map and a game plan of some options of what we think you could do, because we're not advocating that you should stay in a relationship
Hmm.
if you are experiencing this. We are 100% against that. And it depends on the level of what you're experiencing. But if it's at the extreme end, you're welcome to reach out to us, reach out to somebody else, and definitely don't stay in a relationship where you have no bearing. But there is one other thing I want to touch on, and it's such a huge one, and it's manipulation.
Hmm.
And I don't know if any of you are watching this, you've been in a relationship where, you know, uh, I actually had a client who just recently I was coaching, and he was giving me the scenarios where he could just say, my partner could never be wrong. And even when I knew they were wrong, somehow I felt I was wrong afterwards.
Hmm.
So, manipulation is a big one. If you're with someone where, whether you're starting out, it's been something that's compounded up years after years, and they never take accountability for anything, you are not responsible for the things that they do,
Hmm.
first and foremost. I mean, what you're responsible for is making sure that they're accountable for the things that they do that are contributing to your unhappiness,
Right.
your lack of growth and connection that or love that you're experiencing in your relationship. They must, in some shape or form, be accountable. Maybe what you might need to do if you are in a relationship like this is maybe focus on trying to change and shift the way you are communicating, because there's always a way, I believe, somehow, unless someone's just completely out to lunch and very narcissistic where there's not even a chance. Just change your tune. Maybe set the tone for where there's really something important to you, and this is something that you're just starting out, whether you've been together for so long, and that's always the outcome. Is go for a walk. You go by
Mhm.
the lake, go for dinner, and then have that conversation. Allow them to feel connected to you first. Set the tone for the right state. What are the thought processes? What is it you want to achieve by making this? What will you gain by not accepting the fact that you're going to keep going down this path where you're going to be keep getting much of the same?
Mhm.
So that's a huge one, the mental abuse, because what will happen is it'll lower your self-esteem. You'll start to have a lower sense of self-worth. You could start feeling anxiety and stress about when it comes time to communicating about something that you want to talk to them about, because there's no way that you're going to pierce their minds and somehow they're going to manipulate and thinking that you're wrong. Number one, never tolerate. Number two, always believe that there is a way to do that, and if you need some help, you're welcome to reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the end of our top 5 list, Sam.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so if you guys enjoyed this, hit the like button. We are at 91 subs. We'd love your help to reach 100 this month. And if you could do that, that'd be great. And if you are enjoying the content, please subscribe if you haven't already. And the notification bell will allow you to know if when the next video is. And listen, if you know someone that's starting out or someone that's been in a relationship for a year, 5, send them our information. What's so impactful about what we're doing is you could be single, you could be a boyfriend, girlfriend, you could be newlyweds, or you could be 70 years old sitting home. There's always a way to live another day
Mhm.
more connected, to feel more love and growth with the person that you experience love with.
Yeah,
And we'd love your support and be part of our journey.
absolutely. All right. Until next time, always the matters of the heart and mind.